Tonight, a horrifying act of Quran desecration in an Oshawa high school. A viral video shows a student tearing the pages of the Holy Quran and then crumpling them. The Muslim community strongly condemns the act, demanding a thorough investigation. And a renowned Saudi cleric leaves the kingdom for the UK after he criticized the social reforms of the country, calling them un-Islamic. In a latest video, he says migration is the right choice for those who are unable to spread the teachings of Islam. How does Islamophobia lead to genocide? A new report written by Justice for All US examines the impact of Islamophobia worldwide.
The basis of the report is that we are calling on the international community, particularly the United States and Canada, to prevent any further genocides in these countries and also punish those who are responsible for these genocides.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I am Catherine Bullock. The chairperson of a secondary school near Oshawa, Ontario, says they are investigating an Islamophobic incident that took place earlier this month. This comes after a video circulated allegedly of a student from Quarter Secondary School tearing a copy of the Quran and crumpling its pages. Muslim leaders in the community expressed their disappointment and called for action to be taken to prevent such incidents from happening in the future. The school board is taking immediate steps to address this very serious incident. Ontario's Education Minister, Stephen Lecce, has condemned the incident. He says he hopes Muslim students do not feel disheartened. The federal government has proposed changes to its terrorism financing laws to allow Canadian aid organizations to operate in Afghanistan. Charities and non-governmental organizations suspended their activities in Afghanistan due to provisions in the criminal code that prohibit them from operating there. Up until now, the NGOs or advocacy groups had to pay taxes in Afghanistan, which are collected by the Taliban. Under Canadian law, that is considered being party to terrorists. The proposed changes in Bill C-41 would allow aid groups to apply for an exemption to the law, to deliver humanitarian assistance, and also facilitate the passage of Afghan refugees to Canada. A well-known Saudi scholar, Imal al-Mubayth, is reported to have left Saudi Arabia for the UK after posting a video on social media in which he criticized the kingdom's recent social reforms. Al-Mubayth later retracted his comments, reading from a prepared statement. In a subsequent video posted last Thursday on his Twitter account, he expressed regret that he had not been able to speak freely from the pulpit of his mosque due to fear of imprisonment and an unfair trial. Al-Mubayth cited migration as a legitimate option for those who are unable to practice freely their religion. A Ramadan Market was organised in Bedford, Nova Scotia yesterday, offering a range of halal food, clothing and other items for the Muslim community. The market aimed to provide a unique shopping experience for the month of Ramadan. Ramadan is set to begin later this month. The market ran from 10 in the morning to 7 in the evening. Dozens of Muslim businesses and vendors came together in the Bazar. The entry was free of cost. It was one of many events planned by the community for the holy month upcoming. Islamophobia, defined in many ways, but with an idea of fear or hatred of Muslims, is leading to genocide in several countries around the world. Justice for All US, a sister organization to us at Sound Vision Muslim Network TV, is about to release a report. We are joined by the author, Aidan Alexio, his Human Rights Policy Analysis, to talk to us about his report. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me.
Your report, which will be released, looks at genocide with 4 case studies, China, Burma, India, and Central African Republic. And in the report, you lay out a case for genocide and you connect it to Islamophobia. But before I ask you that question, which of course is a very important question, I just am curious about the 4 countries that you chose as case studies. What led to those 4 countries being the case study choice?
Well, these four countries in particular, actually, three of them, Genocide Watch, which is a reputable non-governmental organization in the United States, has already classified them at the stage of extermination. So genocide is either underway or has already occurred in three of the countries, those being China, Burma, and the Central African Republic. The fourth country we selected is India, which is on the brink of a genocide to occur in the near future. So the basis of the report is that we are calling on the international community, particularly the United States and Canada, to prevent any further genocides in these countries and also punish those who are responsible for these genocides.
We'll get into the recommendations and your calls for action later on, hopefully at the end. I'm curious about the use of the word Burma. We know the country now as Myanmar. Why has Justice for All chosen the word Burma for the report?
We've selected this name because it was changed previously by the military junta as part of a political action. So we've selected this name throughout the report. However, where specific names refer to Myanmar, so for example, the United Nations has referred to an independent fact-finding mission to Myanmar, we've used that term as well, but we've tried to keep the original name of the country Burma where possible.
Did you want to add something?
No, that's everything.
The countries are very different, China, Burma, India, and Central African Republic, but there seem to be similarities in the stages of genocide that you looked at. Without getting too sort of technical, can you just explain to us what the stages of genocide are and the stages that you just mentioned about extermination or on the brink of extermination?
Yeah, for sure. So the stages of genocide originate from Dr. Gregory Stanton, who's a former research professor on genocide itself. And in this field, this term floats about quite a bit, which is that genocide does not occur in a vacuum. So we learned from atrocities in the past that there are certain factors or markers that we can see for an impending genocide or certain things that governments do. So over time, these 10 stages have been developed. The process is not linear, so it's not that it goes stage 1, 2, 3 necessarily. The stages can occur at simultaneously, and there's things that we can do at different stages to prevent these genocides from occurring. So they range from stage 1, which is classification, classifying the group as us versus them. Then it goes on to dehumanization. There may be derogatory terms for the group that's about to be subjected to genocide, ranging down to extermination, which I mentioned. Three of the countries that we are looking at are actually classified in this stage. And then finally, denial at stage 10. So it's a helpful benchmark for us to assess the situation in each country.
And is the thread that holds these together Islamophobia, the fact that the communities who are being genocided, I don't know if that's a word, but are Muslim?
Not necessarily, but what does hold them together is hate. At these different stages, hate is fostered against the group. And in our report specifically, we are making the case that Islamophobia, which is a form of hate, is what has led to genocide in three of the countries, or may lead to a genocide in the case of India.
Let's talk about that a little bit more. This term Islamophobia itself is controversial. Why is the report using this term Islamophobia?
Well, it's important to recognize the hate for what it is. Islamophobia, the irrational fear or prejudice against Muslims, which leads to abuse and violence. And upcoming on March 15th, we have Global Islamophobia Day, the first UN Global Islamophobia Day. So we thought it was important to highlight and recognize the important connection between Islamophobia and genocide, and recognize what the form of underlying hate is in all of these countries.
I wonder if you could just say a little bit more, making that connection between Islamophobia and genocide.
Yeah, for sure. It does relate to the global war on terror and how Muslims have been framed for the last 20 years. What common theme we noticed in these countries is that Muslims can be framed as terrorists, extremists, separatists, and these types of narratives are used to justify the persecution of the Muslims in these countries. It's a common theme that we've seen from leaders in these countries.
We're getting on now into the second half of the interview, so let's turn to the recommendations. You have a list of recommendations for the US, for Canada, for the UN, and civil society groups. Now, we won't have time for you to sort of list them all. What would you say, though, is one of the most important recommendations you're making to all of these groups?
Sure. I think at the core of it is recognizing it for what it is. So the root cause being Islamophobia, driving this hatred towards the Muslims in this case, as well as the definition of genocide and recognizing these atrocities as what they are, genocide. What I mean by that is that the Genocide Convention itself, which has been ratified or acceded to by 152 countries of the United Nations, has a specific definition of genocide and makes it a crime under international law. So using this term, recognizing these atrocities for what they are, confers legal obligations on countries to prevent and punish this crime of genocide, versus other terms such as ethnic cleansing, which is not necessarily a crime under international law and does not carry the same amount of obligations there. So that's what I would say is one of the root suggestions we have. There's more specific suggestions such as prosecuting those who are responsible for these crimes. We found that many times those who are responsible have not been held accountable. Sanctions under the Magnitsky Act, both in the US and Canada. Combating global Islamophobia. One thing we know is that Canada has a special representative for Islamophobia within the country itself, but we'd like to see a special office or representative to combat Islamophobia globally, both for the US and Canada, to really take the lead on these issues. And of course, providing the support for the victims and the refugees. For example, the 1 million Rohingya refugees who have been displaced into Bangladesh.
I wonder if you could expand on if something is declared a genocide. You said there are legal obligations. So can you give us an example of what a legal obligation would be?
Yes. So the Genocide Convention itself, in one of the articles mentions that there is a legal obligation on states to prevent and punish the crime of genocide. So, for example, in the case of Burma, the country, the Gambia, has actually launched a case in the International Court of Justice against Burma for the genocide that was committed there. And in the interim, there's been some success. So, for example, the International Court of Justice has ordered Burma to prevent any further genocides and preserve any evidence of genocide in that country. So that's an example of a country taking the lead and trying to assist with this issue.
The geopolitics don't seem to be in favor of your recommendations. Many countries in the Middle East and North Africa right now are courting China, and the West is courting India as a bulwark against China. So I wonder, these particular countries that have been targeted, what kind of support you're really going to get politically?
That could be a challenge. However, we say that shouldn't necessarily be an excuse. We are calling on the United States and Canada to take the lead in order to alleviate these issues, because at the end of the day, there are people who have suffered and are actively suffering, and this is a collective responsibility on the international community. We do mention that we should take diplomatic efforts to alleviate these issues. For sure, it doesn't necessarily have to be completely hostile. We should encourage these countries to look at their human rights obligations and stop what's occurring. But at the same time, we shouldn't use our relationships as an excuse to not help these issues.
If someone wants to read the whole report, where will they be able to find it?
They should be able to locate it on the Justice for All website. It's going to be called the Global Islamophobia Report and should be released shortly ahead of or in anticipation of the Global Islamophobia Day on March 15th.
Thank you for joining us to explain what was going on and for your work in putting the report together.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you like what we do, please share, like, and subscribe. Stay safe, and God bless.